Shakumako, everyone. Welcome to this week's Iraq in 7 Minutes, where we discuss some of the top stories shaping Iraq today. After a short hiatus for the Thanksgiving break, we're back. I'm Erik Gustafson.
And I'm Omar Nindawi. Let's get started.
Yes, and wow, it has been a crazy past few days. So we'll touch on that briefly in terms of events in Syria. But the main topic, which we had planned a week ago, is oil smuggling explained. A recent Reuters investigation has exposed a sprawling fuel oil smuggling network that generates over $1 billion annually for Iran and its proxies. This operation diverts as much as 750,000 metric tons of subsidized fuel oil every month. It involves Iraqi state institutions, militias like Asayb al-Haq, led by Qais al-Khazali, and private companies. So, Omar, let's unpack this story. Can you break down how this operation works? Specifically, how are subsidies, fake asphalt plants, and forged documents enabling such a massive illicit trade?
Thank you, Erik. It's good to be back after the long break. And first of all, I want to acknowledge what's unfolding in Syria. We're witnessing really extraordinary, exceptional times that remind us a lot about rather similar events that took place in Iraq about 20 years ago, the regime change and the overthrow of a brutal dictatorship. So much is yet to be known. There are a lot of moving parts. We will be dedicating a new episode to discuss the situation in Syria. But for now, all we can do is extend our best wishes to the people of Syria for a peaceful transition and for a brighter future. Back to our main topic. Yeah, it's a big report that Reuters has dropped. It's backed by testimonies from officials, Iraqi, Western, and people in the industry, intelligence reports. And it reveals this massive network of dozens of asphalt plants in Iraq, some of which are real, but exaggerate their size and operations, some of which are completely fictitious. And these plants have been receiving large amounts of allocations of fuel oil, a byproduct of refinery operations, to use it to manufacture industrial materials, things that are used for roofing and construction. And these plants have been receiving the fuel oil at a heavy discount to the international markets, allowing for, a great variance or a great profit potential to emerge. And what we have realized, or what we have been informed of, is that these plants, they receive some 750,000 metric tons of fuel each month. And because of this discrepancy between their actual needs and the amount that they receive, there's surplus that can be then redirected for smuggling to be exported to clients and customers, reportedly in various parts of Asia. And the smuggling takes two different routes. In some cases, these plants that receive higher amounts than they actually use, they will then take that surplus fuel oil and use forged documents to mischaracterize it or to disguise it as industrial byproducts, and then take it to the ports of Basra and export it there to enrich themselves. In other cases, the Iraqi fuel oil, as it is taken to the ports and then blended with Iranian fuel oil so that Iran can bypass sanctions and can get a price for its fuel oil that is higher, that's on par with international prices, because Iranian fuel oil, when it's smuggled or when it's bought directly by buyers, often suffers heavy discounts to offset the political risk and the of sanctions. So one pathway enriches the militias, the other pathway enriches Iran, and obviously the militias as well through their involvement in it. So all in all, up to $3 billion a year can be generated through through this operation.
So what role do Iran-backed militias like Asayb al-Haq and Kataib Hezbollah play in this network, and how has their influence expanded under Prime Minister Sudani's tenure?
Asayb al-Haq is the main supporter of the government of Prime Minister Sudani, and both parties have had many of their operatives appointed by the Prime Minister to sensitive and senior government positions. These two groups apparently own and operate a lot of those asphalt factories, asphalt plants that have been newly licensed by the Iraqi government, to the extent that the asphalt industry in Iraq apparently doubled overnight during the term of Prime Minister Sudani. So that expansion is unnatural. The influence that these militias have within the government is what enabled them to create this market niche for themselves within the Iraqi fuel industry.
So this scheme appears deeply entrenched in state institutions, with entities like the State Company for Mining Industry under militia control. What does this reveal about government challenges in Iraq? Are we seeing a shift toward more formalized corruption?
Absolutely. This company, الشركة العامة للصناعات التعدينية, is not only the entity that allocates, that's responsible for allocating some of these fuel shipments, but they operate in partnership. Some of these plants that are owned by Asayb al-Haq are joint ventures, basically, between the militias and the state-owned company. So we have a situation where corruption not only sidelines government authority, but actually has extended its roots through government institutions, so that the operation is happening entirely with the support and with the approval and with the cooperation of government institutions. And that makes it much harder to root out.
And the last question on this topic, the smuggling also has international implications. How does this operation help Iran bypass U.S. sanctions, and what risks does it pose for Iraq's relations with Washington, particularly with increased scrutiny expected under President-elect Trump?
In terms of sanctions, yes, of course, this exposes Iraq to greater risks of sanctions under the incoming administration of President Donald Trump, who has in the past threatened Iraq as a whole, as a country, with sanctions. And we all remember his policy of maximum pressure on Iran, that will inevitably target Iran's oil and petroleum exports. We can easily see Iraq being lumped together with Iran and facing sanctions that can be designed not with a scalpel, but with a hatchet, and can result in extensive damage to Iraq's economy.
Well, thank you, Omar, for that analysis. Now let's turn to some of the week's top developments as captured in our latest Iraq report, Isham. Iraq has published preliminary results from its first census in decades, reporting a population of 45.4 million, over 70% of the population living in urban areas, and children under 15 making up 36% of the population. The Kurdistan Regional Parliament was seated for the first time on December 2nd to swear in, with ongoing disputes over the presidency and the premiership with the PUK. The heist of the century verdicts are in. Iraqi courts issued convictions in the $2.5 billion government theft case. Sentences ranged from 3 to 10 years, but critics argue that they are too lenient, especially with the main suspects still at large. In response to significant advances by the Syrian opposition forces against Assad's regime, and of course now, as reported over the weekend, the fall of Assad's regime, Iraq has bolstered its border defenses with federal police, army forces, and popular mobilization forces. Lebanese refugees began returning home after the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. There's been a continued decline in militia attacks on Israel, with only 2 drone attacks launched since our last report on November 21st, and none reported over the past 2 weeks. And finally, amendments to Iraq's personal status law, highly controversial, faced continued delays, and some interesting developments in terms of the back and forth discussions and how those amendments seem to be changing. So we'll continue to follow that. That's all for this episode of Iraq in 7 Minutes. For more news and analysis, visit us at enablingpeace.org. And if you value this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, masalam.